we'll be on the air with you on this Saturday. A reminder that we're with you all day tomorrow as well. But we can sit back and enjoy what should be pretty good men's 10K. Here are your competitors. Greg Mangarelli, a senior from Stony Brook, ran a 29:35 at the Colonial Relays. Justin Carbone at that same race ran 30:32. He's a senior from UMass Lowell as they begin here. NJIT's Brian McGlue, third seed here. Jack Khalil, the sophomore. Josh Stone, freshman from Binghamton. Cameron Avery, a senior from Stony Brook. James Dennison, a freshman from UMBC. Chris Alfond, who is a very, very talented young man, a senior from UMass Lowell. Ian Dennis, senior from Vermont. Drew Everett, the UMass Lowell freshman. David Leff, a Bearcat, a junior. And Owen Amsden, junior from UVM. As this race kicks off, we got quite a while to get everybody settled in for the finish, but what are the keys to a race like this, especially on the men's side, Dan?
You have to understand what type of race it's going to be early on because, I mean, it's a 6+ mile event. And, there are going to be some members of the field, and in this case it's, 7 of them, who haven't run a 10K this year. Most meets don't have them for very obvious reasons. They want to get out of there, do the meet organizers. And a lot of times the meets that do will run it first and kind of get it out of the way early on. And some championships will do that as well. Here it'll close out day one, a spot traditionally occupied by the 4x800 relay in a meet if there were no trials and they were just running a straight final. But because of all of that, and because this race is so long, you got to understand early on, is it going to be tactical? Is there anyone in the field? Do you know what some of these guys like to do? Have you raced them at championships before? Do they try to break away? Do they try to surge? Do they try to change the pace? And that's where that type of fartlek workout that you do so often in the off-season and in the early part of the season in your big blocks of training can really pay off because you have to get used to changing speeds. But most importantly, patience. If the race is slow and you don't want it to be slow, fine. Go to the lead and pick it up. But you can't sit there mid-pack, sick of the race being slow, make a surge, and then realize you shouldn't have and then slow down. That's going to take so much energy out of you, and you've gained nothing by doing it. You have to make your moves count. You said in the 800 you have 1. You have a lot more than that in the 10K, but you can't waste them. You can't use unnecessary energy for no reason. Just get yourself in the right spot. Don't get boxed in. Understand when you want to make your move and run the race from there. You got a long ways to settle in. Just hang with the pack.
Chris Alfond, who's UMass Lowell's top guy in this race, a senior, he's a great leader for them. Gary Gardner and I talked for a little while earlier this week, and he said that Alfond has always been a leader. He was a walk-on, and one of his teammates from high school actually talked to Gardner and convinced him to let him on the team. There was a chance they weren't going to bring Chris Alfond on. And then he becomes their captain, their senior leader. He'll be the guy that will call kids out. He'll also be the guy that'll put your arm around you if you need that. He's got a cross-country and indoor eligibility left, so he might come back, another mechanical engineering kid, and he's a fifth year finishing his master's right now, but still eligible to keep competing, and a guy that this conference is going to miss not only as an athlete but as a person and a spokesman for not only UMass Lowell but the entire America East.
It's what you want in your captain, and a guy like that he's what you call a pure distance runner. The longer the better. Someone who, if he wants to, would probably take well to the marathon later on. I think if it makes sense for him with where he is in his life, he'd certainly love to come back at least for cross country and indoor track. The longest event's the 5K, but still be very effective in that and can certainly score some points. So, sure, they'd love to have him back if he's ready to do so.
UMass Lowell was actually the only program that couldn't practice at all in the fall. So Gary Gardner didn't see his men from March to January. They were allowed to have 18 women, but it's been a really weird year for them, obviously for everybody, but his team did a great job of training in little pods. Michael Blake had the sprinters together. Chris Alfond had the distance kids together. Kaylee Richards had a lot of the women together. But he just wants his guys and girls this weekend to enjoy the process, be competitive. A lot of teams that are fighting for that 2 to 5 spot, and UMass Lowell is going to be right in there. And It's just about being competitive each and every race as an individual, and when your team can help you out, that's key as well.
This race has been an absolute jog fest. I understand that in a 6-mile race, it's not going to feel fast regardless, but you'll watch when they come around. They'll come around to the mile the next time around. They'll be under 6 minutes, but this is not quick. This is thus far a kicker's race. Certainly not going to see any records broken today.
So who does that benefit, or is it just each runner individually has what the race they want to run, and it depends?
It actually benefits somebody like Alphon because he's got a 3:51 1500. The shorter you make the race, I mean, this isn't going to take that much of the sting out of these guys. So the guys who have the better kick, the guys who have the better natural mile speed and the turnover are going to benefit from this. You have someone like Cam Avery from Stony Brook who's a 14:34 5K. Guys like that. People who say, like, the longer the better, and I know we just said that about Alphon, that's on a more macro scale. If he has the best 1500 speed in the field, that's going to behoove him regardless. But look at this. I mean, they're walking. And it tells you what it is about it when we're a mile into the race or almost a mile into the race and everyone is still together. I take what I said back. They're not going to break 6 minutes, and now the crowd enjoys this as we finally get a surge. I mean, are you serious? 1,600 meters in 6:05?
Brian McGlue, the one to get the boys going. How about that? I mean, that was, for the record, I know that the people watching couldn't see all the fans, or it's really just student athletes in front of us. There's no spectators here. But that wasn't just NJIT people. That was every student athlete in these stands getting excited that somebody opened up this race.
Okay, so nobody has covered the move, and this is what we said about patience. I mean, yes, it's exciting, and it's fun for us, and it's fun for the student athletes and the sprinters who are done for the day and are watching the distance runners who they can't even imagine doing what they would, types of 100 runners who would have to complain about running a 4x4. But now...
I complain about running to the bathroom.
Yeah, he certainly did that. But now for McGlue, he better be prepared to keep this, because if he gets swallowed by the pack, it's going to be a long rest of the race for him, and you applaud the effort, and he's opened up like an 80-meter gap on the field, and maybe he just is going to be this good, but if he does get caught, it's going to be a long, slow run to the finish.
I love that everyone's fired up about this.
Of course,
That's
of course.
Fun. This
yeah.
is fun. I'm having fun now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? He's made the move, and maybe he's decided his only chance to medal in this is to run away from everyone. No one's gone with him. Let's see what happens.
Senior from East Windsor, New Jersey.
He's leading the field by over 100 meters now.
Went to Hightstown High School, played a lot of sports growing up, but ended up just doing cross country and track and field in high school.
I'm going to get his next 400-meter split and then compare it to the leader of the chase pack. I mean, McGlue, this is insane now. This is over 100 meters, or a little over a mile into a 10K. And he's certainly making everyone else work for it. And if he ends up winning this race, first of all, biggest moment of the meet for NJIT by a mile, but every single other person that allowed him to get away and ran in a pack together is going to be taking a long, hard look at themselves. But they trust their finishing kick, and they trust that they know what they're doing race-wise. Alphon now, I believe, in the top of that pack has started to take notice.
And McGlue was one of those guys that didn't have a 10K time coming in. His best 10K in college any year was 33:27.
Yeah, and Alphon's gone 29:06 this season. But still, you know what? He gave some personality to this race, and until we're told otherwise, he's the leader in the America East Final, and maybe he doesn't get caught.
He ran that 10K, though, that 33-minute, in 2018 in Mahwah, New Jersey.
He's got a 28-second lead on the pack. And it is the NJIT folk who are the most dialed into this at the moment from the stands, with them all lining the fence.
Might get the first ever Amerike's storming of the field.
If he wins this, yes.
I'm here for it.
If he wins this, absolutely.
You keep the mic. I'll just be down there.
Okay. All right, so he's coming up on the quarter area that we just put a watch on. And he's coming through in about 78 seconds, so that's 5:12 mile pace. And here comes the pack. This is going to be really interesting because they're now starting to get strung out. They've started to pick it up a little bit. There's a 78 for McGlue. It's a 72 for the Chase pack, so that's 4:48 mile pace.
So whether the pack, and we're imagining Alphond or somebody towards the top of this pack, whether they battle back or not, what are you coached to do in this situation?
Run your own race. And, you kind of take notice of this, and a guy like McGlue surges ahead. You decide right then, am I going to go with him now, or am I going to do what I want to do? They chose to do what they want to do. You've made that decision. Stick with it. Don't all of a sudden decide to make a surge that you're not prepared to make because McGlue's all the way out ahead. And he's put himself out there. As the race kind of unwinds, and remember, we've got 20 minutes or so left in this thing, then you can start to make some different decisions. But, as things stand, they're starting to pick him up a little bit. As McGlue here, we'll see what he's doing pace-wise. That was actually quicker. That one was actually quicker. He went a 77, but look at this. The pack is already coming back. The McGlue is just over 5-minute mile pace right now. And Alphond and company, they came through that one in a lot quicker, actually. That was about a 69 there. So they're rolling.
So it all depends on whether or not McGlue can hang on or if that pack's going to start heating up. And it'd be interesting to see when the few that will jump out of that pack really start kicking it in.
I mean, look, I would love to see McGlue hold on here. If I'm going to be honest, I think he's going to get caught. And if that's the case, then what this move does, though, it's actually a pretty significant impact on the race, because how did everyone else behave? How many times did they surge within the pack that we didn't see that might cost them in the home stretch? Whether he gets caught or not, it has impacted how this race has been run. But it's in those mini surges as opposed to a big move, which some might be prone to take.
And he got the moment of the race so far,
Absolutely.
which we're all here for.
Absolutely. That was excellent.
You got to wonder if he timed his jump when he was right in front of the fans.
Yeah, I mean, you can get caught with a rush of adrenaline.
Yeah,
and once he
why
did
not?
that, I will give him all the credit in the world for continuing to go after it. I'm going to clock these quarters as well.
So that group's quarter was minute 15.
All right, so that's right on 5-minute pace. Keep in mind, they're in a 6:05 opening mile. And yes, for many who don't run, like, wow, a 6:05 mile, that's blistering. Not for these guys.
And I like that it looks like a jog fest, as you said. And they're running a 6-minute mile.
Yeah, I mean, the most insane example I've ever seen of something like that was the anchor leg of the 2015 4x-mile Penn Relays, where Jordan Williams, the Australian international, and Edward Cheserek, who rewrote the collegiate record books, took the anchor leg miles ahead of the pack and stopped. They basically walked. They allowed 9 teams to get back into the thing. The broadcasters actually at one point said, "Thank you, Wisconsin," because they put in a surge. But what it ended up doing was Cheserek and Williams ended up running away from everybody, and it became a 200-meter final. They closed in something like 25 seconds.
Jeez.
Yeah. So things like that can happen. I don't think we're going to get anything to that extent here. I mean, it was just a slow championship-style tactical race. That happens. But these guys are going to be absolutely rolling. McGlue there was around 78 for the quarter. The pack's going to come through in about 75, 76. So he actually didn't lose a ton of ground on that lap.
Adrenaline only takes you so far when there's 15 laps to go, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, in terms of what that means, I mean, the 12.5 would be the halfway mark, the 5K. And at that point, I mean, we'll see here with the pack who's actually been forced to do more than they would have liked because these surges in pace, yeah, I mean, the 6:05 is nice. It's almost funny. But when you're running that slow, you're still running for 6+ minutes. And then these quick changes in pace affect guys differently. That's why you do those fartlek workouts in the late summer and even sometimes during the cross-country season to get used to those differences in pace to handle championship-style races like this.
Now it's really closing in.
We'll see if Maglu, once the pack does catch up to him, whether he tries to hang on to him and if he's able to. I think based on the courage he's shown, he will go with the pack for a while.
Just heard Jordan Royer in the other room say he kind of looks like Paul Hogan right there. Hogan obviously just dominated this event in this conference for so long and got quite the send-off a year ago. Or 2 years ago, I guess. A championship ago.
A season ago, but basically 2 years. And for all the calendar shifts that we've seen in sports, this is the correct championship weekend for outdoor track and field.
Yep.
Always is. Well, here it is with 13 and a half to go. Maglu now leads the pack.
Completely dictating what happens in this race, as you said. I mean, didn't leave anything up to chance. Decided he was going to decide the way this race would be run. It's a race that Hogan won 3 in a row, rounded out his career. Prior to that, Hassan Omar from UMBC won 2 in a row. So not sure if you heard that PA announcement through our mics, but the women's hammer throw, as we mentioned earlier, there was some kind of emergency. We really don't have any more details on it yet, but the women's hammer has been treated like a rain delay. So it's suspended for today. Everything that happened today will count, but they're going to resume it tomorrow at 9 a.m. And we'll try to get the details on that for you, but there will no longer be a women's hammer today. It will resume at 9 a.m. tomorrow. And we'll have all those updates when we hit the air in the afternoon.
So they just came through 5K in 17:10, which is on pace for a 34:20.
So Paul Hogan's record is safe.
Yeah, you think? Some of these guys have run 29:06. And by the way, Paul Hogan's record at 30:04 is nowhere near what Paul Hogan is capable of running in a 10K. He's run faster in other races. Championship distance races are very rarely fast. But that opening 5K was new levels of slow, which means, is the time going to be great? No. Do any of these athletes care? No. They're racing for a championship, and it means we're going to get a cracking last 5K, especially if it stays like this. Last mile, last half mile, last quarter, could come down to the last straightaway.
Brian Maglu, unfortunately, in the back of the pack now.
But still in the pack.
Still in the pack. But he did provide the spark we needed in the first mile.
The proverbial thank you, Wisconsin.
Yes, thank you, NJIT's Brian Maglu.
Yeah, the problem is nobody went with him. So he made it exciting, but it didn't. It changed the dynamic of the race in terms of how it's going to unfold, but it didn't do it in real time, if that makes sense.
So do you think that it would have made a bigger difference if, let's say, 2 other athletes went with him?
Depends who the 2 other athletes were. If one of them was Chris Alfond, yes. Because all of a sudden now the other guys are taking note of this is a guy who's a candidate to win this thing, and I'm just giving him 100 meters of track. So, yeah, potentially it could have made a huge difference.
Pack's still sticking together.
Yeah, they've ratcheted up the pace a bit, but this is still going to be well within the comfort zone for a lot of these guys.
Jack Khalil, who's been at the front of that most of the time. Junior from Milford High School in Mass.
With 11 laps to go, Jack Khalil of UMass Lowell leads the pack, a very tight pack in the men's 10.
2-year captain at Milford High School. 2-time cross-country MVP. Boston Globe outdoor track all Scholastic team, pretty much all Scholastic and everything. His father actually graduated from UMass Lowell as well.
Yeah, back in the days when the Riverhawks were dominating the D2 ranks. Alphond continues to fly under the radar in this race, just kind of tucking in, letting others do the work. He clearly has no interest in making this a long, extended stretch. He'll be heard from before this is through. Don't get any of that mistaken. But again, just allowing everybody to do the work for him as Jack Khalil, the sophomore, continues to lead. I mean, Alphon, though, we talked about his speed. He's broken 229 in the 1,000. I mean, he's got some serious turnover in his legs, and the longer this stays slow, and I wonder how much of that's playing into the minds of Khalil as he slowly starts to ramp things up a bit, they're just playing right into his hands. That's how Mo Farah won multiple gold medals. Just sat. Everyone let him do what he wanted in the 10K, where Galen Rupp hung on with him as well, and then in the 5K in London later that meet. And no one did anything about it. When you have a favorite like that, and I'm not saying Alphon is a runaway favorite, but you have to disrupt. You can't let them do what they want. So with someone like Alphon or Avery or even Khalil, you got to understand what's happening and make sure that you're running the race you want, not getting lulled into what's happening around you. If you want the race to be fast, get to the front of the pack and speed it up. And it really helps that the wind has essentially died. I mean, there's a little bit here, but it's nothing compared to what it was before.
Khalil's been the front of that pack the entire race. And Brian McGlue, who provided the spark we needed, is now in the back of everything.
And he's going to get a very warm reception from his teammates after this race.
Heck, I think he'll get a warm reception from the whole place.
That's true.
Well, we have time here on the men's 10K. Let you know about Ready Nutrition. The America East Outdoor Track and Field Championship is brought to you in part by Ready, the official sports drink of the America East Conference. Ready Sports Drink is a game changer in performance hydration that powers you through all your performances with advanced hydration based on science. Check out Ready Sports Drinks at teamready.com. Ready Sports Drinks for game-changing performance, energy, and recovery.
So, Michael, we said that the first mile of this race was a 6:05. The mile they just ran after the 5K mark, 5:02.
So that's more like it.
I mean, this is championship-style racing. I'm not saying that 6:05 shouldn't have happened. It happens a lot in these types of races, but...
Why is that in championship races? Why is that different than a... Yeah, I guess that's my question.
Because you have everything to run for, and a lot of guys, they're better off with a slower race, and they can sit and kick. There's also the fact that nobody wants to lead, nobody wants to set the pace, so you end up hoping someone else does, and when nobody does, it gets slower. No one wants to run themselves out of the race by going out too early. And in a regular invitational, you might have a pacer where the whole purpose of it is to run fast to get your national qualifiers or something like that. But B, if things don't work out, so what? There's another one coming. This is the championship, and guys want to run tactically, get the position right, and give yourself the best chance to win. So unless there's an ultra-marathoner here that we don't know about who doesn't have turnover whatsoever but has immense strength and needs to run away from people, it's naturally going to be a slower burn. It's going to be a slower buildup. So nobody wants to run themselves out of a championship halfway through a race.
Packs look the same the whole way through.
Yeah, nobody willing to put themselves out there just yet. And Khalil, though he was ostensibly in second for most of the first part of the race with McGlue out in front, McGlue was so far out in front that from a functional perspective, Khalil was still doing all the work of a leader.
It's Khalil, Leff, and you get Vermont's Ian Dennis. You see pretty much the whole field making the turn together. Justin Carbone, probably the back of that main pack that's starting to separate itself now as it kind of picks off one by one different athletes fall off, and now it's opening up a little around this turn.
Well, and Khalil's no slouch. He's a 14:50 5K guy. He's more than capable of running from the front here. Other guys to watch out for, you got someone like Greg Mangarelli from Stony Brook, who's a 14:33 5K. We mentioned Cameron Avery, who's 14:34. Alphond, who's got that turnover that's sub 230, sub 229 even. 1,000 speed, a 351.15. And, of course, the pedigree of having just done a 29.06 this year.
Ian Dennis from Vermont right in there. Another program that's obviously had ups and downs, and they haven't had a total COVID shutdown from anybody, but Matt Belfield said his message this week is take care of what you can take care of. Every person that you beat he calls that a win. Instead of saying I need to win the race, I need to beat the person in front of me, and if I beat all the people in front of me, then I'm a champion. But I'm sure that's the message right now for Dennis, who's sitting at third in this race.
Well, you talked about their COVID lack of major issues in track and field, but like the Vermont campus saw some of that a little bit. I mean, you had their women's hockey team who played something along the lines of half of the amount of games they were expecting to, and it was a shame because it was an excellent, excellent team this year, probably the best Vermont's had in a decade.
Happened with men's hockey as well. They had about a month of the season off.
Vermont and BU were the two in Hockey East for whatever reason that seemed to, and it wasn't always because of stuff in their own program. It's just who they happened to be playing against that week. But just resilience all around in this event is nothing but resilience.
As you get a tight shot of our previous leader rounding out that turn, Brian McGlue.
Thank you, Brian McGlue.
I'm trying to think of the right way to classify what he's done today. He's made it interesting. He's made the 10K interesting at the beginning, which is usually you got 10 minutes of the beginning to kind of just hang out.
Well, and it's interesting in the sense of, you understand what's coming. So there's a bit of it's almost like the meet as a whole, right? We said at the beginning a lot of nervous energy, but you're just waiting for the pot to boil over. And we're still getting to that point, and we're 26 and a half minutes into this thing. But with what McGlue did, it gave a surge of excitement right away. By the way, with 5.5 to go here, inside of 5 laps now, this will be the second mile after the 5K, and they've actually sacrificed a little bit for pace here. This mile, the ostensible 5th mile of the race, will be slower than the 4th, which means this is going to be an absolute barn burner down the home stretch.
What's your mentality if you're in that pack going into the last mile? How do you approach it?
Well, you got a shot for starters, which is huge. You're in this thing. You have a chance. Let's get that mile split real quick here. They seeded a little bit, 5:05. But, at the end of the day, you understand that it's going to be a sprint. Because for 10K guys, anything shorter than an 800 to sprint, let's be honest. The question is, who goes and when? And at some point over the next lap or so, that's going to be the only thought on these guys' minds. One of two. One is, I can't get boxed in. So the guys that are on the outside right now are in better spot. The second is, who's going to make their move and when? And apparently this might turn into a mile. We'll see how this shakes out.
3 Riverhawks in that front group now, as it starts to become a group of 4.
Well, there we go, and it's a Stony Brook Seawolf that's put themselves out there. We mentioned that Cameron Avery would be a threat.
It is Avery up front.
Here we go. He wanted to make a long run for home. He trusts his mile. He trusts himself to win over a mile more than over any distance shorter than that, making a long run for home. There are 2 Riverhawks that have covered the move. Here we go. This is the exciting stuff in the 10K.
Avery, Alphond, and Drew Everett, the freshman. Avery in the red, he's up front. Alphond, probably the favorite going in. And how about the rookie in there? Drew Everett.
That was a 65. That's 420 mile pace.
Justin Carbone on their heels, then Greg Mangarelli. Imagine your champion's going to come out of one of them.
But this is it. Cameron Avery has committed. He wanted this to become a mile race. And you got to believe, based on when he made the move, that that was the plan from the get-go. Alphond has covered it. Everett's hanging on.
3 laps to go. They're going to pass our previous leader momentarily.
Oh, they're rolling.
What's your plan if you're Alphond right now?
Hang on him until you're ready to go. He's run the race he wants to. That's another 65 for these two. Alphond's doing exactly what he needs to do. Just don't lose sight of him. Decide when you're going to make your one decisive move. Make your move for the championship and do not look back. Whether Avery can cover that move, we will see, but we're inside the final 800 now.
Great finish ahead. Chris Alphond on the heels of Avery. One of those two is going to win gold.
And a big mental game for Everett here. He's got to stay within himself. The bronze medal is his if he can stay in the race. He's not going to catch Avery. He's not going to catch Alphond. But he'll find himself on the podium if he hangs within himself. Avery looks the more comfortable of the two, but Alphond has the pedigree and he's got the speed.
Final lap, here we go.
This has been metronomic over the last mile. This one's quicker. That's a 63.4 for Avery.
Gas pedal now. He's pulling ahead.
The champion in the Patriot League in this event yesterday closed in 57. Can one of these two do something like that?
It's all about if Avery has the gas left in the tank.
He's opening up.
Lead's still extending.
Just ran a 30-second 200.
Cameron Avery, the Stony Brook senior, in his final go at this. He pulls ahead big time. Alphond gave it his all. Avery in the final 10 meters wins the America East Championship. Gold for Avery, silver for Alphond. And Everett will hang on and get his bronze.
He made it a mile. Cameron Avery made it a mile. 62.05 unofficially over the final quarter, which means he closed in 2:05.5 over his last 800. And extremely roughly about a 4:15 final mile.
What a race.
Yeah. That was excellent. That's theater in the highest order.
So that race, the style of that race played to both of their strengths perfectly. They both wanted it to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Alphond could have had the race back, of course he would have made his move a little bit differently. But the fact is, Avery committed to a mile run for home. That's a risk. It came exactly the way that Alphond would have preferred it. He just didn't have it in the end, and sometimes that happens. But Alphond ran hard. Alphond ran right with Avery down the home stretch. It was an excellent race. And yeah, I mean, these guys trust their speed. There's no reason to go out early, because if Avery goes out and pushes the pace, say, at 5 minutes in, or, you know what, 6 minutes and 5 seconds in, we'll give him the 6:05. He runs out of steam, then he runs out of steam. This way, he wanted to make it a mile, and he got it, as now McGlue is going to finish here with a well-earned cheer from the crowd, as will James Dennison of UMBC, as they're all going to dip under 34 minutes.
Sign me up for 2022 in Burlington, Brian McGlue, 10K.
Here's the weird thing about how that race unfolded. McGlue got lapped over the last 5K. And even him, who ran away from the field altogether, was faster in the second 5K than he was in the first.
And he got lapped.
Yeah,
That's tough.
That's championship
Yeah.
10K racing for
That
you
makes
right
sense.
there. Yeah. I mean, that's just what happens. And it tells you, I mean, a 4:15